That's different. Is this the wrong time then? Which was right?
Are we gonna have a countdown?
We're going to have anybody directing us? Nothing?
Yeah, anybody letting us know when we're live?
It looks like it's 1 minute.
No, we're live already. Welcome to Unity this morning. Well, welcome to Unity through live stream this morning. We thank you for joining us, and be a great way to start our day through meditation, but we start with chanting. They say to sing is to pray twice, and so we'll be doing a call and response song that Norma and I will lead, and then the response will be Larry and Louie. And we just ask you to get comfortable and get in a meditative seat, something that keeps your back straight, and we can connect to the Father Sky, going through the third eye and entering the body and collecting the energy of Mother Earth into the body as well. So they're both going in and through our being, centering us and vibrationally bringing us into balance, remembering that in the quiet or in the music, we can experience the still small voice of God, Spirit, Source. This is a time for us to remember our true divinity, especially now, to remember that we are the eyes, the actions, the ears, the beingness of that Christ Spirit through us in demonstration. So we'll start by anchoring ourselves in spirit through chanting.
Holy
ecstasy of love, of love.
Living in the 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 ecstasy of love, of love.
Divine love, oh, 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 divine love. 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 Oh, divine love.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin with a few announcements. I want to remind you that we have minister fellowship and discussion every Tuesday and Friday at 12 noon on Zoom. And we also have fellowship again and discussion after the second service on Sunday around 12 noon on Zoom. If you don't have the Zoom code, you can simply email Unity at unityofboulder.com, and we will send you the code for these particular Zoom meetings. And also want to remind you that we have a Saturday service at 5 in the afternoon every Saturday with Rev.Jack. And of course, our 9 a.m. service is myself and my wife, Norma. And at the 11 o'clock service, you have Reverend Cintisha Shadle, who will be sharing, again, her deepest understanding of the truth as she lives her life, raising a family. It's a beautiful thing to hear, and it gives a lot of insight in how to live effectively and beautifully. And last, but possibly most important, I ask you to find the donation tab on your screen when this service is over, and make a donation. That helps us to continue to do our services, our classes, our counseling. Nothing here has actually changed except we don't have people coming into the physical structure of the church. But we still have about the same expenses. So your donations are seriously appreciated at this time. I revealed to you last week that the objective move and teaching of Enlightened Zen masters is the same as Unity's approach. The object really is to help people gain the enlightened awareness in the here and now, and do away with the illusionary idea that sometime when we drop the body, we'll go to a place where we will be in heaven. Whereas we understand that heaven is in the here and now, and we can attain that by making this personal transformation in awareness and living from a higher level of consciousness. But Unity can't afford to hire enlightened masters. So what they do is they collect a bunch of people, mostly men, who they put through a crash course in ministry in which they teach us how to pretend we're enlightened. And it's not easy in itself. It may sound like it's easy, but it's not. You know, we have classes in just how to dress to look enlightened, and they give a class in how to lower your eyes halfway so they're at half mast, your eyelids. So it makes you look like you're in a deep mystical state. And then what they do is they trick you every now and then. They'll have one of the students slash one of your tires in the parking lot, and then they'll videotape you when you go out and see that your tire is flat, to see if you've kept your eyes at half mast. So as I said, it's not easy to pretend that you're enlightened, but that's what we have to do to try to get the unity word across. And again, oh, but look at this. Last week, you remember that I wasn't really fairly treated as an enlightened master, because the people that set up this particular altar gave me this stubby candle. It was like 2 inches high. And it's not easy to act enlightened, you know, when you've got this tiny little candle. But so I put in a request for a full-length candle, and look, here it is. So now I know I look a lot more enlightened this week than I did last week. So I hope you'll stay with me as I talk through these particular ideas. You know, when I was in the ministerial program, one of the questions that was asked of the students was to name 5 things that you felt an enlightened master had. And of all the things that the students came up with, none of them came up with peace of mind. They had things like long hair, beard, straight teeth, you know, white pants, turban, things like that. But not one of the 40 students that were being trained with me came up with the idea that an enlightened master would have peace of mind. And this so perturbed the teacher, who himself was not enlightened, that he grabbed the Course in Miracles and he read this to us. And it's kind of disconcerting that nobody in the class got it. But it really ticked off the teacher, and he read this to us. Think not you understand anything until you pass the test of perfect peace. For peace and understanding go together and never can be found alone. Each brings the other with it, for it is the law of God, they be not separate. They are cause and effect, each to the other. So where one is absent, the other cannot be. I'll read this to you again, which is what this teacher did over and over, so we would get it. All right, let me see if you can get it. Think not you understand anything until you pass the test of perfect peace. For peace and understanding go together and never can be found alone. Each brings the other with it, for it is the law of God, they be not separate. They are cause and effect, each to the other. So where one is absent, the other cannot be. So that's it in a nutshell. And you have no idea how much anxiety is created when a teacher reads something like that at you and you're trying to act enlightened and keep your eyes at half-mast. But it really creates a lot of anxiety, but you have to keep it hidden, keep it in. That's part of the training. The Master of Life spoke to the idea of the necessity or the main ingredient in coming into a life truly worth living. And that life would have to include peace of mind. You really couldn't say that anyone was leading a successful life unless they actually had peace of mind. So I'm going to begin by sharing this particular Bible passage with you. It's a beautiful parable. Let's see if we can get into it and understand its message to us. Can we have this first PowerPoint up here? You can read this in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Now, as they, the disciples and Jesus, went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which shall not be taken away from her." Can we have this back again so we can go through it? Now, as they went on their way, he, Jesus, entered a village, and a woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which shall not be taken away from her." From a higher level of consciousness, we come to understand that this is not a comparison about the disposition of two separate women, two sisters. From the higher level, we see that it is a comparison about two states of consciousness, two states of mind. Martha, who is out there serving on her own and becoming agitated, is that state of mind in which we are trying to control the world, fix the world, serve the world, and make the world work for us so that it fulfills our personal desires, our demands, and our dictates. And of course, it's frustrating, which is being depicted here by the frustration of Martha, who is saying to the Master of Life, "Why don't you tell my sister to help me?" And this is the kind of attitude that the attempt to make life in the world work from our personal point of view, from our personal will, is futile. It's absolutely futile. It's beautifully given to us in the Greek myth about Hercules, when he's fighting the many-headed dragon. Whenever, with his huge sword, whenever he cuts off one of the heads of the dragon, two more grow in its place. And so he has this battle that cannot be won. That is another indication of what we are attempting to do when we try to make the world work by trying to control the conditions and circumstances outside of us. We have to realize there's something more to be understood in order to affect life and live a life worth living. Now you have Mary, on the other hand. that sits at the feet of the Master. I'm not going into in the detailed metaphysics of this, but just for your edification. The feet, when you read about them in these particular passages in the Bible, they metaphysically represent understanding. She is sitting at the understanding of the divine Christ, or the Christ within her. She's seeking the understanding of her true self, which we often refer to as our higher self. So if you don't get anything else out of this particular talk this morning, you can understand this. Whenever you see Jesus in the Bible and what Jesus is doing, you can interpret that immediately as being the Christ in you. Jesus represents the Christ in you. And all that he goes through and all that he teaches and all the relationships he has, you must understand, is all about how the Christ in you goes through these different experiences in transforming your own awareness. When he runs into the hypocrites in the Bible, which are referred to as the Pharisees or the scribes, that are forever trying to get him into trouble. This is the hypocrite within ourselves, the ego-centered idea of life, which is a hypocrite in its own keeping and what it does in its attempt to discard the idea of divine awareness or to mock it and to attempt to continue to reign superior in the consciousness. That's what the ego is ever attempting to do. So our spiritual practice has to do with quieting the ego-centered consciousness. And just as Mary sits at the feet of the Christ within, the divine Christ within, we do that by meditating. We sit still, we relax the ego-centered mind, which is forever thinking. And Eckhart Tolle refers to that as the incessant thinking of the illusion-driven mind. And so we relax that and allow this more refined consciousness to rise within us when we sit down to meditate. Here's Eckhart Tolle sharing his truth with us from The Power of Now, his great book. This is on page 63 in The Power of Now. The undercurrent of constant unease started long before the rise of Western industrial civilization, which now covers almost the entire globe, including most of the East. It manifests in an unprecedentedly acute form. It was already there at the time of Jesus, and it was there 600 years before that at the time of Buddha, and long before that. Why are you always anxious? Jesus asks his disciples. Can anxious thought add a single day to your life? And the Buddha taught that the root of suffering is to be found in our constant wanting, and that is wanting people and circumstances to be other than they are. So can we have this back again? The undercurrent of constant unease started before the rise of Western industrial civilization, which now covers almost the entire globe, including most of the East. It manifests in unprecedentedly acute form. It was already there at the time of Jesus and was there 600 years before that at the time of Buddha. And long before that. Why are you always anxious? Jesus asked his disciples. Can anxious thought add a single day to your life? And the Buddha taught that the root of suffering is to be found in our constant wanting people and circumstances to be other than they are. In the Martha and Mary story, you see the juxtaposition of this state of mind, the state of mind that is always anxious and trying to get things accomplished in the outer directed world, usually to gain some personal advantage in the physical life that will then bring about the peace of mind that we all seek. But you see, the way these masters talk about this, they are relating to us that even down through the ages, long before we had this really high-tech, fast-moving consciousness in the conscious culture of our time, long before that, even in Jesus' time, when the fastest thing on the road was a donkey cart. And in that time, there was anxiety. And even Buddha, 600 years before, pointed out that the anxiety is caused by wanting and never being able to fulfill that wanting. It really comes down to never knowing what enough is. And if you look at people that are anxiety-driven, and everybody is to some degree, but you look at those high-powered people that are trying to make life work and to exploit whatever they can in the world to accomplish that, you find how anxiety-ridden they actually are. And that is why we have so much alcohol abuse, drug abuse, food abuse, shopping abuse in this country. People trying to get away from the anxiety that works within them all the time. And really the way to do it is to get in touch with your divine self, the Christ within. This is referred to that way. It can be, you can call it Buddha nature, or you can call it God consciousness, or you can call it the living Tao truth, that it resides in your own deep consciousness, and you can allow it to come forth and guide you in your life. And that, by the way, is the only pathway to true peace of mind. Because accomplishing that, you live from a higher level of awareness in which you recognize your interconnectedness with everything else around you. You don't have that nagging anxiety that it depicts everything as being separate and not necessarily concerned with your well-being. But from the higher perspective, the true awareness, we begin to operate in the flow of life in the world. We move with things in the way that we should move with them, in harmony, in peace, in blessing, in compassion. This is what true religion is all about. It's all about personal transformation and coming into the truth that will make us free. So what we have is Mary leaving the egocentric idea of life and sitting at the feet of the Master. Eckhart Tolle will speak again to this in this way. This is The Power of Now again, page 18. As you grow up, you form a mental image of who you are based on your personal and cultural conditioning. We may call this phantom of self the ego. It consists of mind activity and can only be kept going through constant thinking. The term ego means different things to different people, but when I use it here, it means a false self created by unconscious identification with the mind. As you grow up, you form a mental image of who you are. That's your collection of beliefs that you have picked up along the way, based on your personal and cultural conditioning. We may call this phantom self the ego. It consists of mind activity and can only be kept going through constant thinking, constant doing, constant getting, constant attempting to fulfill one's personal desires and demands in the outer directed world. The term ego means different things to different people, but when I use it here, it means a false self created by unconscious identification with the illusion-conditioned mind. Unconscious means we go through life being tossed to and fro by every changing tide of circumstance in our experience. So we have no real peace, because we may have a momentary place where we feel at ease, but that doesn't last very long either, because the changing conditions and circumstances of the world are constant. It's necessary for us to be centered in the divine awareness and to go forth in life, to be in the world, but not of it. This is the way the Master tells us we can find happiness, peace, healing, joy, true love, understanding. It all comes from this true relationship with the divine within. And that's done through the process and the practice of meditation. We're going to do that now. We're going to meditate together and begin with our Tibetan bowls, calibrated to help us get into the energy fields that move us to this higher level, this more refined level of consciousness. As we go through this, we will reach a period of silence. Somewhere around 10 minutes, we'll have a period of silence. If you don't have a particular meditation technique, when we enter that period of silence, you can just still the mind by holding it focused in a gentle way on a mantra. Some mantra that may go like this. You may use this idea. There is only one everything. Only one. In you, in me, in everything we see, there is only one. Only God. As we go forth from this meditation, let us go forth with a gratitude for everything, and especially for the opportunity we have, especially these times when we can sit and practice the presence through meditation. And then when we become efficient in doing that, we'll be able to carry that presence with us in all that we do in life, in our work, in our relationships, in our marriages, in our world. So this week, I would ask you to take this thought with you and work with it as best you can to bring about the objective of true peace of mind. Work with this idea. Peace is here and now, and everywhere else if I bring it. Peace is here and now, and everywhere else if I bring it. So in moving now to our reminder of announcements, we have a wonderful fellowship every Tuesday and Friday with the ministers at 12 noon on Zoom. And again, after the second service at 12 noon today on Zoom. You can get that code for your Zoom on, just go send an email or go to unityofboulder.com. Finally, a reminder to you to tune in and keep in touch with what is truly valuable. You can tune in to our 5 p.m. Saturday afternoon service with Reverend Shad Groveland, or the Wednesday evening meditation with myself and my wife Norma, or Shad's Monday meditation on Zoom, or stop in and see the second service today, which will refresh you for the Palm Sunday experience with Reverend Cintisha Shadle. So we have all these opportunities, and by the faith that you have and that we have in you, we can continue to operate here in Unity of Boulder. So please find that donation tab on your screen and make a donation so that we can continue the spiritual work that we do here. Thank you.
Come to the light, the candle of hope. Everyone gather near.
Good Friday service at 6 p.m. on Friday, full with music and metaphysical insights into life and the Bible and the master teachings down through the ages. That's at 6 o'clock this coming Friday.
This is therefore to say that transformation of human consciousness through meditation is frustrated so long as we think of it in terms of something that I myself can bring about by some kind of wangle, by some sort of gimmick. Because you see, that leads to endless games of spiritual one-upmanship and of guru competitions, of my guru is more effective than your guru, my yogas are faster than your yoga, I'm more aware of myself than you are, I'm humbler than you are, I'm sorrier for my sins than you are, I love you more than you love me. This interminable goings-on about which people fight and wonder whether they're a little bit more evolved than somebody else and so on. All that can just fall away. And then we get this strange feeling that we have never had, you see, in our lives, except occasionally by accident. Some people get a glimpse that we are no longer this poor little stranger and afraid in a world it never made, but that you are this universe, and you are creating it at every moment, because you see, it starts now. It didn't begin in the past. There was no past. See, if the universe began in the past, when that happened, it was now. See, well, it's still now. And the universe is still beginning now, and it's trailing off like the wake of a ship from now. And the wake of the ship fades out, so does the past. You can look back there to explain things, but the explanation disappears. You'll never find it there. Things are not explained by the past. They're explained by what happens now. That creates the past, and it begins here. That's the birth of responsibility. Because otherwise, you can always look over your shoulder and say, well, I'm the way I am because my mother dropped me. And she dropped me because she was neurotic because her mother dropped her. Now away we go back to Adam and Eve or to a disappearing monkey or something. We never get at it. But in this way, you're faced with it, you're doing all this. And that's an extraordinary shock. So, cheer up. You can't blame anyone else for the kind of world you're in. And if you know, you see that I, in the sense of the person, the front, the ego, really doesn't exist, then it won't go to your head too badly if you wake up and discover that you're God.